That's what I tell the kids, right? Make sure you get the information. What you think about it, that's up to you. What you're going to do with it, that'll soon be up to you. But make sure you get it. See, there's nothing worse than being stupid. Nothing. I mean, being broke is bad, but being stupid is awful. And what's really bad is being broke and stupid, right? That's about the end of the world. I mean, there isn't anything much worse than that. Unless you're sick. Sick, broken, stupid. I mean, that is it, right? There's nowhere else to go. So make sure you get the information. It's key. You don't have to like it, but learn it.
That's the dumbest, smartest shit I ever heard.
And it's that time again, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Idiot Philosophers podcast. As always, I am your host, Malachi Eggy. To my right, Big O, Oscar.
How's it going, guys?
How you doing, buddy?
Fantastic.
First and foremost, before we get started here, just a big shout out to all of the listeners so far. Thank you guys so much for your support. Without you, we cannot do what we do, so thank you. But if you are listening, yes, you people who are listening right now, I need you to go on your phone, rate, review, subscribe, share, like, hit us up on social media. We are live on YouTube, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Music. So please find us, give us a shout out, leave a comment, leave a review if you have not done so. We are joined by a very, very special guest today. I'm excited about this podcast. I think you guys are going to enjoy this a lot. So joining us now, this gentleman does a lot of community work in actually very near and dear here, right in Manchester, Connecticut. Most recently works with the Connecticut Food Justice Project and runs a food pantry out of Manchester Community College. So welcome to the show, Mr. Gordon Plouffe. Welcome. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. Braving the cold weather.
Braving the
tonight.
cold, yep.
So thank you, sir. So yeah, to just jump right into things, man. What is your story? What led you to sitting here today interviewing with us?
Well, I'm really defining this new chapter in my life. And in 2007, I got too sick to work, and I was homebound for 3 years. And then when I was strong enough to stand up and get out and do something, I went to Manchester Community College as a student, and it was a life-changing experience for me, and I really grew from it. And then that opportunity led to what I'm currently most known for is the Cougar Pantry at Manchester Community College, because I had the opportunity to take over a pantry, and knowing firsthand what it feels like to go to a food pantry out in the community, and you have to be interviewed and show documents and basically beg for food, and they tell you kind of what you're going to be eating for the next couple weeks, and that's embarrassing. Mm-hmm. So I never went back again. So when this opportunity landed in my office, literally, I got recommended by 20 or 30 of my colleagues at the college. So having no idea how to operate a food pantry or how to find so much food for free, I just took the challenge, and now we are setting the stage for Connecticut to change how college campus food pantries run. So in our food pantry, anyone in our MCC community can literally walk into the space and just take whatever they want and come back as often as they want to. And we're currently distributing about 5,000 pounds of food in a week. Wow. And it's good quality organic produce. We have grass-fed steak, black Angus steak. We have chickens, we have turkeys, turkey breast, and good quality groceries. Students are literally proud to feed their families in there. And the food that we get is quality and wholesome food, and there's so much extra food in the food distribution system that we literally never spend as much as $200 in a week on food, and we're retaining hundreds of students by doing that.
Yeah, I was doing just a little bit of research before this into just the need for this kind of service in Connecticut, and I was even shocked. I mean, I know that there's a lot of areas of Connecticut that are, not well off, and a lot of people who are really struggling. But I was just reading some of the statistics, and I was shocked at exactly how many families are considered to be under the poverty line, as it were. And what's crazy is that specifically in Connecticut, I was looking, and they have something called the Alice line. Which,
I was reading that,
which basically just stands for the assets are limited, income constrained, but they're employed. So they're people who have jobs, but they literally can't afford to live in Connecticut because of the cost of living. So they can't afford housing and transportation and food and the basic things that people need. And according to this article, which seemed to be a very reliable source, it was all government statistics and charts and everything. They said that roughly 40% of all households in Connecticut actually are at or below that Alice line. So there's a gigantic need for people, a place for people to go and be able to get that good food and be able to get it at free or at a very low cost. So that the work that you're doing, I'm sure, is greatly appreciated.
Yeah, the Alice line is like, when I look at it from my perspective in this project, it looks closer to 100%. But, an example of the Alice line, last year I had twin sisters who were at the high school, Great Path Academy, and then they came over to the college to become college students. And the state wants you to work 20 hours a week while you're a full-time student. Mm-hmm. So they cut the family's food stamp allocation to $59 a month for 6 kids, 2 parents, 2 grandparents, and 6 dogs.
Wow.
So yeah, they needed the pantry a little bit.
Yeah.
And they make too much, so the state doesn't want to help them.
Well, that's what I was reading about was that that line, basically that threshold is right around $25,000 a year is what you have to make to meet that line. But the actual national federal poverty line is way below that. It's like around $12,000 a year. So all of those people don't actually qualify for any kind of state aid or anything because they're above the federal poverty line. But that line, that $25,000 line, that's for one person.
One person.
One person. They said for a family of 4 in Connecticut, you have to make over $77,000 just to be able to afford your basic healthcare, food, transportation, all that kind of stuff.
And a lot of times it means you're working 2 or 3 full-time jobs. Mm-hmm. How you raise kids when you're doing that?
Mm-hmm. So, I wanted to get a little bit into sort of your journey, before this. Before the illness, and what were you doing? What was your original career in, or your journey before that?
Well, my first career was in the restaurant business right from the start, and it was interrupted a couple of times. I was a few years into my adult career when I had to experience my first suicide attempt. And that interrupted my career by about 3 to 4 years. I was out of work at that time. They said I wouldn't live, but I lived, and they said it would take 2 years to walk, and I walked in like 2 weeks. Everything they said I couldn't do, I did. Literally made it look easy. So it was a hard journey, but it taught me a lot, and it made me the person that I am today. So my first 50 years were as a survivor. My next 50, I'll be thriving, not just surviving.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and then that takes me, my journey from 3 to 4 years in the hospital, and I was let go with no aftercare plan. So the only thing that they gave me was a piece of paper that said I could have all the narcotic pain medicine I want on demand, anywhere, anytime. So that led to addiction. Addictive behaviors, and then working in a career.
That doesn't sound like a recipe for success there.
No, it's certainly not. But it's everything you go through in life that's hard literally makes you stronger. So I went through all that. I did that working career, and then I got to MCC, and in 2011, and I went there assuming that I would fail because I already did fail. In the 80s, I was here. I was sent to college at age 17 when I graduated high school, totally not ready. I was going to be an athlete and wanted to serve my country. My parents had different ideas, and I went to college, and I learned where the best parties were and where the best drug dealers were, and not much more than that until they finally told me to go away because I was a bad influence. And I totally took that as a compliment. And I was happy I didn't have to go to school anymore. But then when I came back, when I went to MCC, like I said, I assumed I would fail because I already proved I could fail.
Sure.
And the very first people that I met, Bess Lewis with the Adults in Transition program, made it very clear that if I took her class and did everything she told me to do, I would be a successful student. And then she introduced me to my advisor and mentor, Carla Adams, the Business Office Technology program. And she made it clear that I was going to be a very successful college student and starting a new career. And in my first semester, I was so far out of my comfort zone that I really couldn't talk to people at all, with one exception. When I was hungry, I was there on fixed income, and books cost a couple $100, and transportation and everything else is so expensive when you're on a fixed income. And fixed income is okay if you're just going to sit on your couch for the next 30 years, because you can have a roof over your head, you can have some food, but not much more. So I immediately had food insecurity, transportation insecurity, and book insecurity. And as soon as anybody knew about any of my needs, they just gave. They didn't give me advice. My classmates were making sandwiches. Oh, Gordon, I cooked dinner for the family last night. We made a plate because we're thinking about you. Or I'm emailing a professor or director of student activities. Hey, it's noon and everybody's eating and I don't have lunch money. And if I go home, I'm not coming back. They would just take me to the cafeteria. Hey, I'm going to be in the cafeteria in 20 minutes. I got to ask you a question. Can you meet me there? Like, yeah. What's your question? Which hot lunch do you want? And then take a sandwich for later. And don't forget some fruit. And you need something to drink too. Just get it. And one of my classmates hated her job. She was a waitress at a restaurant. I won't mention the name. She hated it. But every now and then she'd have make like really good money. And she would just hand me $20 bills. And when I tried to give it back to her, she was offended. She's like, Gordon, I don't do a favor to get something back. If you have something you want to share, pay it forward. That's what makes the world a better place. And then, so those are some defining moments for me. In fact, my English class was another defining moment. The student sitting to my right, different color than me. She likes hair and jewelry and makeup, kind of like not my thing at all. She's pregnant. I didn't have anything to do with that. I had no reason to ever talk to that student. And she's young enough to be my daughter too. So after 6 weeks in the class, all the homework was in the book. She turned to me at the end of class and said, how are you going to pass the class if you don't turn in your homework? And where's your book? I've never seen you with your book. And I was embarrassed. I didn't know what to say. So she didn't make me say anything else. She just took me by the arm and walked me straight to the library and copied her book at her expense. And she said, don't ever go without. If you need something, you just tell someone. And so like that whole semester, these things kept happening.
Sure.
And I couldn't process it. So over the break and into the spring semester, I was like, whoa, these people represent the kind of world I want to live in. And it's very different from the first one that I lived in.
Sure.
And I want to be a part of this. So I used to go to all the student clubs so I could learn all about that. Plus they all had pizza. So
got some pizza in there.
yeah, so I had to get the pizza fix. And then that led me to student government, and that led to a couple of internships at the state capitol. I sat on the Board of Regents as the chair of the Student Advisory Committee for one academic year. That was amazing too. But all these seeds were planted, and that's what was required to make this Pantry project what it is, because no one in Connecticut had done it before, and I had never heard of this open door, open shopping thing anywhere. But recently, just a few months ago, I went to Temple University for Real College, hosted by Sarah Goldrick Robb and Claire Cady, and I met college students from around the country, and everybody's trying to do this. And so my first question was, why isn't this in the news? They make us look at everything that's violent and ugly, and why can't we see good news?
Right.
And then my next question was, well, my next observation was, in Manchester, we're doing it better because we're just a small community college and we're serving, 200 to 300 student visits any given day. And then some of these bigger colleges are like, oh, we were so busy last week, we saw 20 students. Or last month was really busy. We saw 100 students. I'm like, dude, that's breakfast. You need a little more outreach. But it takes a long time to get there, too. Yeah. And then one thing that I noticed that we all have in common, we all have to fight for the right to feed people. People, decision makers on every college campus want these things shut down. They don't want them to operate.
Wow.
Because people just have to try a little harder. I did it. They can do it, too. You're enabling them, Gordon. Like, no, textbooks didn't cost $400 30 years ago when you graduated college. And, you know, it's a different world today. It's a different reality. Like going back to the Alice numbers that you saw. It's that significant. And
so let me ask you a question, Gordon. So as you were starting on this journey to get involved with the food pantry and you kind of took the initiative to grow it, so it's safe to say that you were getting a lot of pushback from folks
constantly
involved in the community college, and how did you kind of wrestle with those, you know, with those people pushing you back, and what did you do? Did you have help from other students as well or other faculty?
Well, actually, it started with a vision. On day one of the job, I had a vision. I brought my boss there because I was a student the first year they set it up. The director of student activities, T.J. Barber, had 2 interns from Central come in, and they set it up very traditional with the whole interview process, and it was staffed with professors and directors. And I was like, oh, that looks a little intimidating to me. I would never go there. And my only interaction in that first year was that they would say, hey, Gordon, this food expired yesterday. Where does it go? I said, it needs to go on that table so it can get inventoried in the morning. And I'd be like, what time are you leaving? And they're leaving at 8. I'm leaving at 8:15. And I'm shopping on the way out. I ate the expired food. And yeah, it was totally. So my vision was, I brought my boss to the space where the interview was, and I said, guess what? We're not doing that. He said, well, it's okay. You get to decide what you're going to do. So tell me what you're going to do. I said, not me, we. We're going to treat our students with dignity and respect, and we're just going to love them. And that's literally what the space became. It took time because I had no experience in the food pantry business.
Right.
But I quickly found people who wanted to give us thousands of pounds of food every week just because they appreciated my vision and how we want to just feed people.
Now, were you going to to get this food? Were you going to local supermarkets, wholesalers, just folks in the community, volunteers?
No, actually, the first 700 visits were totally students, student clubs, and faculty, just either doing food drives or just bringing food in. Hey, Gordon, I shop at BJ's, so I take what I need and you get the rest. That was the first 700 visits. And then one of my former student volunteers came in to see how the project was going, and I said, well, I'm a little bit concerned now because there are more and more students coming in, but we're getting donor fatigue now, and I'm afraid we might get to the point where we might not keep up with our food drives. So he went and he got his student club, the Newman Club, and they went and they got the Muslim students, and then there were some Mormon students and some Christian students and some non-believing students. They did a prayer circle for 45 minutes. And based on that, the student government decided to fund it. So they put aside money so that we could go to the store and get food when we need it. So that was successful, but not sustainable. So I had to just follow my curiosity, and I was sitting with a hunger action team in Hartford, and the chef came out one day and said, I need a partner because I have too much perishable food and I don't like to throw it away. So I was like, we have college students and we eat anything. Yeah. So send it to us. So he started with, 3 or 4 banana boxes of food every Monday and Wednesday. So I could just go there with anybody in their car, put a few boxes in the back seat, and we have food. And it's good food. It's like Trader Joe's sandwiches and Whole Food salads and Stop and Shop produce and food like that. Oh, and he also gives us the steaks and the pork chops and all that too, that he gets too much of. And then when he came to visit, he said, this is the most beautiful project ever. It's time for you to get a pickup truck because I'll fill it twice a week. Wow. And he literally does that. He literally fills the pickup truck twice a week. And then as a food share partner, we also have access to a lot of food, thousands and thousands of pounds every month for very little money. Very little money. So I mentioned if 5,000 pounds of food gets distributed in a week, and the food bill is usually less than $150. Yeah.
Now, is that, that 5,000, is that something that's going to be continuing to grow, that needs to continue to grow, or?
I think we're at capacity now food-wise. So the food distribution system, it took 2 years to develop it. But I think with the numbers that we're seeing now, I think we're at capacity in regards to the food. Now we want to find a way to get funding for personal care items, especially women's items, because all that stuff's very expensive in the store.
Right.
I know what it's like to push the cart. You start out in produce, and you want to take care of yourself, and then you go pushing up and down the aisles, and then you get to where the soap is, and the razors, and all the stuff the women need, and that stuff's expensive. Now you got to put stuff. That's why you find bags of apples in that aisle, because people are like, I can't afford to eat and keep myself clean. It's those are heart-wrenching decisions, and they shouldn't be. Because all the food that we get is really literally other people's surplus food. It would have gone to a dumpster, would have gone to a pig farm. We love pigs, but they're going to eat okay.
Right.
But we need to take care of people too.
Absolutely. Now that so that journey on there, Gordon, you mentioned that in the past you've had the experience where you went to a food pantry and they kind of made it difficult for you to, especially being in that position, where you have to, resort to that, and they were making it difficult. So what differences have you brought to your program from what your personal experience was in the past?
Okay, so it was so embarrassing that I remember it was a Tuesday afternoon in the second week of June in 2011. She embarrassed me that much that I remember the date, and I will never go back to that office. And so when I said that we're going to treat our students with dignity and respect, that's where I was coming from. I was like, we're not going to interview students. We know why students are in college. We know that books cost $400. We know it costs a lot of money to keep your car on the road because you don't live on the bus line. We know these things, so we're just going to feed you. That was my vision.
Right.
And, just knowing firsthand how it was, and students validate that all the time. I remember one time we had a bunch of winter coats, and a woman came and she said that she really needed help with food because she raised children. Now they go out, start their families. They found out life was hard, so they've come back in, and now she got to feed everybody, but she can't get resources for that because they're not part of the family anymore in the formal sense. So, and then I mentioned food stamps, and she said, yeah, I get that, but that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. And I mentioned the food pantry. She's like, yeah, it's embarrassing. I literally will go without food for 4 days before I go back to a pantry that's like that. She said, we need it the way you're doing it now is what we need.
So what's that normal process? They vet the people coming in and make them go through some kind of interview process to validate that they're somebody who can use it, or tell us a little bit about that.
Well, first you have to show ID, and that's not cool for some people who are here in different statuses. You shouldn't have to prove that you're legal to get food. I mean, we should just literally just be feeding each other. And then also that they want documentation. They want you to literally prove that you need food. Having no regard for the fact that I would rather go to the supermarket and buy my own fruits and vegetables and take care of myself. It's hard to go in those places and ask. And it's usually canned food. And this is where obesity and poverty come hand in hand. We see a lot of obese people in very low income areas. That's what I experienced as a student. I was eating everything that was high sodium, high fat, cans and boxes, because that's what people in the traditional sense want to donate, right? When students do a food drive, they're looking for kidney beans and tuna fish and all that. So I was a student for 5 years, so I spent a lot of time eating a lot of that food, a lot of the dollar menu food, and doing a lot of my grocery shopping at the Family Dollar and the Dollar General. There's salt in all of that. Now all of a sudden I graduated and I'm morbidly obese and I have high blood pressure and a heart condition. I'm like, oh, how did that happen?
Right.
So now that doesn't have to happen to students now, because they can eat local organic produce, all this lean proteins, all these quality meats. Then I have to eat everything out of a can or a noodle bowl.
Cheap pastas and a lot of cheap carbs.
Yeah, that literally hurts people.
Now, what are you mentioned also? So that example you gave of that young lady, that wasn't part of the family anymore in a formal sense with the college or whatnot. So are you involved in trying to get this type of program outside of that formal sense and just be able to provide to the community and just let anyone come in and say, hey, it doesn't matter if you're a part of this college or that association or whatever. If you're hungry, you can come and grab a plate to eat.
Yeah, so the system office president Ojakian said, Gordon, we knew it would be successful, you doing that in Manchester. Prove to us you can replicate it at 2 additional community college campuses, and we'll pay people to work at all the public colleges to do it your way. Because there are other colleges who have some things in place right now. Like I can think of one college has very few students, and they have to do the same interview, and then they have to then they have a meeting to determine, did the student prove that they need food, and if they did, they give them a box of 20 items, not of the student's choosing. And I said, no, that's insulting. That's insulting. You don't know what they need.
Right.
You can't tell them to eat those 20 items. I'll come back next month and prove you need another box of those 20 items. That's really not cool at all. So, I train all my student volunteers. We changed the student the base of the volunteers to students. Students take care of the space. And I have to interview all the students because they have to share my vision, and we have to be totally judgment-free and just welcoming. And welcoming, it's not enough to just say everybody's welcome. It's not unusual to find a student in the hallway who can't come in the door. You just literally see the stress on them. And this is a student who went to a professor for help. Professor said, what's the matter? Why are you feeling this way? Oh, I haven't eaten for 3 days and it kind of hurts and it's embarrassing. So they say, go to that place. I teach them to bring them to the place because telling them to go there doesn't always work. But when they get to that area, they look in and they don't have enough self-esteem. They have too much anxiety and there's uncertainty. Are they going to treat me a certain kind of way? Is it going to be embarrassing? So we have to say, hey, friend, welcome. We have a beautiful project over here, and I need practice describing it. Do you have 1 minute to give me? Now they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about, who's this crazy guy? What's he want? And then when they go in the room and they see just literally just full of groceries you can take home, foods you can eat here, and we tell them the 3 rules. Don't go to class hungry, don't go home hungry, and don't let your family be hungry. It transforms the person immediately.
That's awesome.
Sometimes it makes them cry. Once or twice it made people angry. Says a professor brought a student in to me one night. I was there late in the evening, and the student needed to see the food, and I said the 3 rules. I said, don't go to class hungry, don't go home hungry, don't let your family be hungry. She turned red in the face, she squared up on me. She said, say that again, and if you're lying, I'm going to hurt you. And I totally believed her. And I said it again, and I said, please tell me where you're coming from with that. She said, that's not how the world works. So I said, we know how the world works. That's why this is so necessary and beautiful, and it exists here just for you. And she just came in crying. She's like, I literally never heard good news before, and this is so much more than that. I have no words. And I got to meet her later. I met her she was on campus one day in a common area, so I asked permission to sit with her. Come to find out, she got bullied her whole life in the home and outside the home. And now she's in a place that loves her and cares for her. So the angry student that came in that day is not likely to graduate. There's too much going on. Too much getting in the way of the education.
Sure.
Now that she realized that she's part of a community where we all care about each other, she walks in every day with confidence, and she feels loved, and she projects love. So that's literally what the project has become. It's literally just love your neighbor. It's that simple.
That's great. And now, Gordon, so you mentioned this is kind of the second half of your life and getting into this positive role. And I mean, those stories are fantastic.
Yeah.
And I personally believe, I mean, it's one thing to not have, an extra dollar in your pocket, but I don't think anyone should ever go to sleep without having something to eat. I mean, that's a terrible feeling, so that's fantastic that you guys are definitely doing that work for the community, and you guys are doing it in a sense where you're not embarrassing somebody. You're not, because like you said, we already know what you're going through.
Yeah.
We've been through it, man. Just take this food and just, go on about your day. So I think that's fantastic. So now take us back, something you touched on earlier. So you said you were a suicide survivor. At that point in your life, what was going on at that point, that kind of brought you to that, to that decision to say, you know what, I don't want to be here anymore. And what happened prior to that and led you up to that decision?
Well, as a young person, I knew that I had some issue with my mental health.
Sure.
We weren't allowed to talk about it. Okay? People are going to think we're crazy. Well, guess what? We're all a little bit crazy. We find our ways to deal with it. But in my case, it's probably a chemical imbalance that could have been corrected with medicine. But when you have the suicidal ideations every day for your entire life, for as long as you can remember, and you're not allowed to talk about it, pain builds up. Pain builds up. And it followed me into adulthood. And then it got to the point where one day I was driving in the car and I was like literally in so much pain that I was willing to do anything to make it stop. And I did some remarkable things, and I had a visit. I was behind the wheel of a car at 60 miles an hour, and I set myself on fire. That's pretty much the end of anyone else's story. Well, in the chaos of the car being upside down and on fire, and there were people nearby who couldn't help, I got visited. I felt a presence in that car. And I heard the words. I felt the feeling like a hand on my shoulder. And I heard the words, "Get yourself out of this car and I'll be with you the rest of the way." So I kind of took that kind of serious, and I got out of the car. And I remember being in intensive care. I remember talking to the surgeon before I went for surgery. And then I remember being in intensive care. And the surgeon talking to my parents said, we did absolutely everything. Nobody lives through this. I can't figure out why he's still here, but he's not responding. There's literally nothing else that can be done for him. Has he been baptized? And they said no. He said, try that, because we got nothing. There's nothing left. And I don't remember the baptism, but I remember I woke up as the baptism concluded, and I was trying to talk and trying to move, but I was in traction and tubes everywhere. So that was a new beginning.
Oh yeah.
But then my aftercare program, for getting released from the hospital years later, with literally no plan other than a piece of paper that said I could have as much narcotic pain relief as I want, just led me down to addiction. And eventually I went back to work. They said I would never work again. I worked a lot. So then over the years, I overcame 2 more attempts. And the third attempt was, I was a student at Manchester. And even though I was having a beautiful experience, one day I just felt like, boy, if I walked out of here, nobody would even notice I'm gone. All the students are younger than me. They're all good looking. They're all making money. None of that's true. But that was what was going on in my head.
Right.
And so I went home and I overdosed enough to kill 10 people. I woke up after 5 days and I was like, oh, here we go again. Got to start over again. Here we go. So I went back to school the next day, and of course they intervened. They're like, you don't just do that. And so that led me to go to the hospital, inpatient. And it inspired my primary care physician to send me to a program in Texas called Discovery. Where you go for a weekend, you go home for a month, you come back for another weekend, come back for a month, and go to a third weekend. And it totally changed my life. Never again suicidal ideations. That doesn't mean I don't get depressed from time to time or experience anxiety, because I do, but I can manage it now. I can manage it, and I can see what a beautiful person I am, as opposed to how I saw myself before this experience. And that's so expensive, and I couldn't afford to go. But my doctor, he paid for me to go for the first weekend. The first weekend I was there, one of my classmates said, "Gordon, I talked to my husband about you, and we want you to come back for the second part. We'll pay for everything."
Oh wow!
And then when I got there for the second time, they said, "Thanks for coming back. We're not going to graduate without you, so you're going to come back. And this time you can't stay at our house because someone else is, but just set up." Just tell my husband how many days you want to be in the hotel. You can stay as long as you want.
Wow.
And it totally, totally changed my life. totally took suicidal ideations out of a place where they lived for already 40 or 50 years. So it's just amazing.
I think what's, really incredible about that story, it's definitely making me tear up a little bit here, is just that, coming from that place of total desperation, at that point in your life, to now you want to help people try to stay away from that mindset and try to understand, who they are, and what they can be. There's a lot of young people, a lot of kids who are just trying to get on their feet and just trying to go to school so that they can, get a job, or so that they can learn something and do something that maybe nobody in their family has done before, whatever their reason for school is. But there's a lot of people who are struggling there, and it's easy sometimes for us to think that, they're just young and they're not motivated, or they're not doing what they need to do to be successful in this situation. But in a lot of instances, and I'm sure you could tell story after story of people who they're spending everything they have just to get there, just to try to learn something, just to try to get their degree. And for you to be able to take your story and your your first half of your life, as you said, and then be able to apply it in such a beautiful way to help other people, is something that, I hope that you understand is very powerful. And I'm super excited to be able to blast this story where more people can see it, because I think more people need to hear your story and hear what you're doing for other people. You have no reason to be doing what you're doing. You don't have to be doing that. You could be doing something entirely different, but you decided to make the choice to help people. And I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I could make more money doing anything.
Yeah, exactly.
But I wouldn't trade it. And I just, like I said, I just got promoted, so I'm a Vista leader now. So I'll be overseeing 5 AmeriCorps Vistas, 3 on community college campuses, and 2 with the Connecticut Food Bank.
Nice.
Addressing it from a different angle. But eventually we'll be statewide through all the public colleges. We'll have the same thing. And the college taught me how to care about that. The college cares about people in that community. And those seeds were planted in me, and now I'm just giving back. And the beautiful part about it is that I'm teaching all these new college students how you watch out for each other.
Right.
We're all struggling with something. It could be money, could be housing. We have students on that campus. I meet students every semester who will literally pay tuition before they pay rent. They literally will break into abandoned buildings in the city. Last year I had a kid move into an abandoned house in Manchester, a foreclosed house. And he checked in with the police too. He said, please don't throw me out. I literally have no place to live, and I want a college degree so that I can always take care of myself. Just help me stay safe for a little while.
Wow. Yeah.
And then like I met him because it was, I think, a year ago in January. He came in one day. He said, do you have any winter coats in your career clothing closet? Because I'm kind of cold. I said, no, but I have a donation coming later. Check back later. Came in the next day. He's like, I'm really cold now. And then that's when he told me his story. So I said, oh, friend, I can't do a lot for you, but you can have my winter coat. Someone gave it to me because I didn't have one. I want to give it to you. I mean, I have a roof over my head. I have heat. I have food. You can have my winter coat. And then this year, it came back to me. It's this coat. It came back to me. He came back this semester. He said, Gordon, they're messing around with my financial aid. They're making me make payments because the financial aid process is too long this semester. So I literally don't have money to give them. So I used my paycheck for a backpack, and I set up a YouTube channel, and I'm gonna travel the country, and I'm gonna document, and people are gonna sponsor me, and I want you to have your winter coat back. And so he's literally walking the country because he has no place to live. He's just gonna document it.
Documenting it. Wow.
Yeah,
it's a lot of real stuff going on out there that a lot of people don't realize. Especially, I had this conversation recently with someone where, there's a lot of promotion, right, for, of course, things internationally and food banks overseas and send money overseas. But there's a lot of that stuff happening here at home in our backyard, and it's not being shown. It's not, the public is uninformed and unaware of what's happening. And I think that if a lot more was done in that sense through platforms like this and in news or whatnot, I think a lot more people would step up and, you know, help folks out in the community, you know, and you just don't realize it. Like, you know, I honestly, you know, I went to MCC for, you know, maybe a semester back in the day. I never knew that anyone, you know, I was young, right? To think that another young person was there struggling, not eating, you know, not having a winter coat, not having a place to stay. That never crossed my mind, you know? And it's one of those things where we're just unaware and uninformed of what's happening, you know, in our own community. So I think that that's huge to be able to blast that out there and get involved. It's really important. And going back, Gordon, to, because it's something I want to touch on, just kind of one of those things where I just can't let it get away, because I'm pretty sure that, especially when you're going through changes in your body, you're a teenager, and thoughts happen, and there's a lot of chemical imbalances happening in your body. That happens to everybody, right? Where you don't know puberty and all these things. So when you were going through moments where, you know, you had these suicidal thoughts, or thoughts of maybe not even that deep, but just having that feeling, that depression, looking back at it now, what are some things that you would do different? What are some things that you think would have helped you in that time? Like for some of the listeners that might be going through that, where they can reach out and try to get help.
That's an interesting question, and I think I want to surprise you with the answer. I wouldn't trade a thing. I literally, during those moments when I was in surgeries after surgery after surgery, the pain of the skin infections, the pain is so intense that make you want to die. Just wish you would want to die. I would say, what am I going through this for? Why am I going through it? And people would always say, God has a plan. You have a purpose. I'm like, well, somebody give me a clue, because this is starting to get old. And then now I was in this project at MCC, and I was like, oh, dude, I totally get it now. Yeah. That was my training. That was my training, because I talked a lot about the food, but it also became other. It became totally a safe place for students to talk, and they literally would come in and just tell us everything. Wow. And that was intense. And I can't teach that, and I can't promote that. But it did inspire, because I was able to talk to my boss about the kinds of things that students feel safe in our space talking about, to get mental health services on campus, so that someone will be right there when a student is in the moment, or legal services. You know, okay, Gordon, my mom's coworker wants to get her deported because she found out her status. It's a little stressful. Lawyers are kind of expensive. Yeah, we literally have that stuff on campus, all over the place. Students would show up in crisis and just lay it all out there. And, you know, so when I say I wouldn't change anything, because somehow I became that guy that everyone would come to.
It's your personal journey.
Yeah. And I can handle it now.
Absolutely.
So, you know, one of our goals with this podcast is to help connect not only listeners and, you know, viewers with resources, but also, you know, hopefully the other way around as well. You know, connect our guests with an audience, or with people who want to help and want to become involved. So, you know, what are some of the challenges right now that you're facing, either maybe in the expansion process, or, you know, what are ways people can help? You know, what are ways people can get involved? If they hear this story and they say, I want to provide this amount of food, or I want to help in this way, you know, give us some actionable items for the listeners of ways that they can help you and help your goal and vision. Well,
$5 feeds 50 students. That's powerful. You can't do that at the supermarket. You can't do that at BJ's. But $5, and in our world, $5 feeds literally 50 students.
So how would somebody go about donating to that?
They could go onto our Cougar Pantry Facebook page and ask for the mailing address to the foundation.
Okay.
So we have a student government line item, and we have a foundation line item. We're a 501c3, so it can be tax deductible if you're itemizing. And students give $5 all the time. Sometimes they give $1. They're like, this is the only dollar that I have, but I want you to have it, because you can do a lot more than I can do with it. And if anyone is interested in providing personal care items to for students. That's expensive, and all the agencies that are in this network, those are the number one requests. So nobody has surplus. But if people can afford to either gift cards or just drop off some personal care items, especially for the women, that stuff is very expensive. Oral hygiene is very important. I've gotten donations of 500 kits of toothbrush, toothpaste, floss, and mouthwash, and they're always gone within a day. It's never a storage issue.
So you would say, some of the bigger needs then are those hygiene, personal care items, sort of the bathroom supplies as that's what people need. Okay. Awesome. And then, any other avenues? How do you guys generally do the promotions and stuff? How do you get the word out about this? Is it primarily through Facebook?
Well, we have the Facebook page. It's a little bit stagnant, and to try to get students involved. The first year the pictures are always me or one of our deans, and I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of cool, but you got to see some students too, Yeah, right. But the students seem to feel differently about that. But it's actually just word of mouth. We go to we welcome all the students in with a new student orientation called the Cougar class, and that's where we talk about all the support systems that we do have on campus. And you're not just a student; you're part of a bigger family now, a community. So we want people to be connected so that people don't drift away like I did as a young person, or even as I did in that moment that I described as a student the second time around. And we go to certain classrooms, certain sociology professors, certain first year experience, and other progressive-minded professors have us come to the class to talk about the food pantry and everything else that it is for students. And the students are so connected, and we don't even have like paid workers to maintain it, but the students love the project so much they literally change their schedules so they can spend time in there.
Now, can non-students participate in that program and in helping out and volunteering?
We do welcome volunteers from the greater community. There is a small interview process because we have to share the vision and be non-judgmental and all that. That's very important to us.
Absolutely. Now, Gordon, let me ask you a question. So, you have awesome experience with this. So let's say, what is your approach if you feel that, maybe you see a student on campus and you feel that, hey, this student might need help, whether it's maybe just talking or might be, hey, I think I've seen this guy skip lunch a few times or whatever the case may be. In your experience, what's the best way to kind of approach somebody and try to help them, in getting whatever help is necessary for them? Because, people are, like you said, embarrassed and they're afraid to ask. And they'd rather, like that young lady said, I'd rather go without than go through the embarrassment. So, what are some things that you do in your experience to kind of alleviate that and help them?
Well, I teach my students, every time I teach them about the project, I say, now that you know, you can't not know. So if you're at the lunch table and everybody's eating and one person's not, don't mention that. Just say, hey, I'm going for a walk. There's this beautiful project over here. Come with me. I want you to see it. Because once they see it, they're just okay with it.
Right.
Because the food is beautiful and wholesome and nutritious and in abundance. And it just transforms a person from someone who had little hope or no hope to now, oh, I'm part of this beautiful community where everybody just cares about each other. So it's the indirect approach. Just walk them right in.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
That's awesome.
And then we also do the SNAP applications on site. So if students mention they're trying to get that done, so you can do it right here. Make an appointment with me. You don't have to go somewhere else and go talk to a stranger and tell them all your stuff. You'll just be right here where you're already part of a community. And we do that. And then we also have holistic student services attached to this project, where we can bring in case managers for students and their family, how to not get your heat shut off in the winter, how to get jobs, how to get whatever resources you could think of. If we don't know a person, we know someone who knows, and we're able to set people up. And
awesome. That's fantastic. Gordon, I really, really appreciate you coming in today and sharing your story. I think I know that through this, you're going to get more help. You're going to get more volunteers. And hopefully, somebody was touched or reached by what you had to share today. And I really hope that through this, we can help you guys go from 5,000 pounds to 10,000 pounds, or whatever it takes, whatever you guys need, or whatever the community needs. So guys, if you have a desire, if you hear this and you're motivated in any way at all to even just learn more or help in any way, you can hit us up directly, through our Instagram, and we'll pass you along to Gordon. You can also find him right on LinkedIn, and I'm sure shoot him a message. But you can also reach out, email us directly at idiotphilosophers@gmail.com, idiot_philosophers on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way. Just shoot us a direct message, and we'll plug you guys in there with MCC and get you involved. Like I said before, the more that you can share and help out with distribution of this podcast, the more people that can be reached and the more people that can be helped. This information only goes as far as the people who share it. So if something touched you guys today, please rate, review, subscribe, and share, all those things. Until next time, guys, this has been another episode of the Idiot Philosophers.
Absolutely. Gordon, it's been an honor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the platform.
Absolutely. Take care, guys. Peace.